In chapel, let's all stand, enter into God's house with some praise and thanksgiving, and thank Him for all the great things He's done for us.
Casting my cares aside, leaving my past behind, setting my heart and mind on you, Jesus. Reaching my hands to yours, leaving there so much more, knowing that all you have in store for me is good. It's good. Today is the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Today is the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I won't worry about tomorrow, trusting in what you say. Today is the day. Putting my fears aside, leaving my doubts behind, giving my hopes and dreams to you, Jesus. Reaching my hands to yours, leaving there so much more, knowing that all you have in store for me is good. It's good. Today is the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Today is the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I won't worry about tomorrow, trusting in what you say. Today is the day. I will stand upon your truth. I will stand upon your truth. All my days I'll live for you. All my days I'll live for you. I will stand upon your truth. I will stand upon your truth. All my days I'll live for you. All my days I'll live for you. Today is the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Today is the day you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I won't worry about tomorrow, giving you my fears and sorrow. Where you lead me, I will follow, trusting in what you say. Today is the day. Today is the day.
Amen. Thankful for this day. You may be seated.
Good morning. We want to look over a couple announcements this morning. Before we get into announcements, we're going to actually finish up with our scripture. Well, let's go ahead and get into our announcements. I'm excited. We have a power verse this morning, so I want to get right to that. But first, a big thank you. Last week we had our back-to-school bash, and it turned into our back-to-school brunch, and that was a blessing. Thank you all that helped. Ladies helping with casseroles and biscuits. Everyone else that helped with everything in between, and our men helping, especially our iron men, coming through and taking care of all of our grilling and all of our food. It was a blessing. In fact, an unexpected kind of one of those things make you smile. We had our guests with us last week. What a blessing it was to have our folks from Philadelphia, but some of them had never had biscuits and gravy. And so for the first time ever, they were able to have biscuits and gravy. I had heard the story that one of them said, what do I do with this? And so what a blessing it is to have biscuits and gravy. So that was an unexpected blessing for them. But thank you all. It was a great picture to look up here and see our students, to see our educators, and just have that time of prayer. So I hope that's something that we can do every year. And let us know if we grill out next year, that's fine. But if breakfast is good, we may do our breakfast again next year. So let us know. Iron Men will be meeting tomorrow evening. And Iron Women will be meeting. I've got my list is kind of scribbled together, so I'm sorry. I've kept changing notes and things. Iron Women will be meeting tomorrow evening. Just a moment, we're going to have a presentation of that. Awana, that's what I'm going to get to. So we have some changes in Awana, and I have all these scribbled dates, and so that's what we're looking at. First, number one, keep this date. Our Awana Connect training is August the 26th from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Let me talk about that. So Miss Wendy Shields, she is our area Awana director. She helps us kind of connect. She connects with our Awana programs. I was able to work with her when we were at Skeet Rock, so I've known her for a number of years. The church knows her. She's going to be coming into the area that day. She's going to be bringing folks with her. We are also going to be able to connect to other churches that do Awana. So she has asked Glay Morgan to be the host site, and we have graciously said yes. They're going to be coming in. They're going to be doing some training. Now, Zach and Casey and Jeff will be meeting with us later, and we're going to iron out our program. So everything that they'll be training, we may be doing some of their ideas, some things we may be doing differently, but we're going to be walking through those trainings and gaining some information and just swapping some ideas. So what a blessing that is, and that's going to be August 26th, 10 to 3 o'clock. That program will be sponsoring our meal that day. We're just being the host site. Now, back to Awana. So we have a few changes. So our leadership is changing. We praise the Lord for the program that Daniel has built the last couple of years. He's taking a break this year and passing the baton. We're taking that program and building off of it. Again, Zach and Casey Clifton and Jeff Roberts will be our leadership team this year, our directors. Zach and Casey being our Awana directors, and Jeff coming in and being our consulting Awana director because of his background in Awana. So our workers meeting will be right after church, Sunday the 3rd. We are going to move our kickoff date backwards. That's going to be the 13th. We need one more week because we want to take the things we learned from the Awana training and have time to talk and iron these things out and then come back. So that's one change. Our workers meeting the 3rd. Please pray about helping. What this program passed to us, we had quite a bit of students for last year, and so we are going to need lots of helpers and workers. So please see Zach and Casey Clifton and Jeff Roberts if you are praying about helping. I think that's it. At this time, we're going to ask Miss Eliza to come and share with us about Iron Women, and then we'll have our power scripture and our morning prayer.
Good morning. My name is Eliza, and I'm just going to tell y'all right now, Kim picked the oddest duck in the building to come promote Iron Women. I am probably the oddest duck you'll meet. So if those of you who know me, don't amen too loudly for those who don't, okay? Iron Women, I cannot even describe what a blessing this group has been. I was here in the building with with Grace Point, and we had a great women's group, and then all of a sudden, everybody started moving and they had left and we lost that. And I had just been looking for a connection. And then we went virtual for a while. And so nobody was really connected to anything. And then we came back and then we had a men's group started. We still didn't have a women's group, but you're plugged in places in church and you're doing things. And then one day they announced that, we were going to start a women's group. And I figured, why not? Why not continue to be the odd duck out? In my 40s, flat single, not divorced, not widowed, flat single, no kids, didn't do children's ministry, spent my life working in sports journalism and the police beat. Let me go see how they feel about me here. And that's literally what I did. I walked in and said, okay, let's see if they can handle it. And sure enough, I was the only one there who wasn't married, didn't have kids, didn't work in children's ministry. And what I found there was what I had lost from my previous church too. There was an acceptance. There was a loving. Nobody called out anything. Nobody pointed out differences. And what we've discovered with each other is that we're all different, even though they're similar, in similar points in their lives, but everybody's different. Everybody's got a need. Everybody has a void. Everybody has some hurt they've gone through. And we all need Jesus. And that's what it comes down to with our group. And this amazing group of ladies, Kim, I've already told him I'm throwing him under the bus. Melanie, you're going with me. I lost my dad December of 21. That was the only rock of my life. And all of a sudden I was like, what now? This group of ladies just came alongside and were like, no, you've got us. Not only did they come along, but the Iron Men came along. And the church has always been there as a church whole, but your small groups are where it's at. These are your intimate connections. These are the people that know all of your faults, flaws, and failures. These are the people who know when you have breakdowns. These are people you run to knowing they're going to be there. And my people were there. And I was so floored. And then not long after that, Miss Melody Mullins, hold your hand up, please. She corners me about a change in my thinking, in the way I'm doing life. And so she asked if I wanted her to start praying. And I said, sure. And then a couple of months later, raise your hand, Chris, somebody on the electric guitar pops into my life. He's choking to death as we speak. And we've been together over a year now. He's put up with me that long. Y'all, that's a miracle. And my ladies are there walking me through this change in my life. For the first time, I come to them with a positive change in my life. Small groups are where it's at. I've got my ladies of the mornings. Our Sunday school class is wonderful. Like I said, having your church family is amazing. You know there's a large body there. You know that your safety net is there. But your small groups, that's it. Those are your tight people. Those are the ones that you know without a doubt you're running to, and they're there. I encourage everybody. I don't care what your age, where you are in life. Come give it a try. It's biblical. It's all about the Bible. We're in God's Word. We're finding how to be better servants, better stewards, better sisters with each other. And it has changed my life so much I can't put it into words. Again, if those of you who knew me, don't amen. Brittany. But, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., there will be a group of ladies here sitting around either on couches or around tables with a Bible open, just in God's Word, finding how we can serve each other better. Come join us. Have no fears of judgment or anything. It's like I said, they picked the oddest duck possible to come up here and talk. And I'm telling you right now, this odd duck would not be where she is right now with all of her sisters.
Thank you, Miss Liza. Thank you for your testimony and a testimony of what God is doing through Iron Women. Please, ladies, prayerfully consider coming and joining this very important group. Our passage this morning, Psalm 36, your mercy, O Lord, is in the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches the clouds. Your righteousness is like the great mountains. How precious is your loving kindness, O God. Therefore, the children put their trust under the shadow of your wings. Let's pray. Dear God, we ask you, Lord, to bless this place, this worship. Everything belongs to you. God, Lord, we ask you to that we position our hearts to you, Lord, that we do put our trust, Lord, in you, in the shadow of your wings this morning. And when we do that, Lord, we ask that we bring true worship before you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please stand with us as we continue our time of worship this morning. Thankful that we have a risen, living Savior. How about you? Amen. We're going to celebrate that right now.
Everybody clap your hands. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my truth till I met you. I was breathing but not alive, and all my failures I tried to hide. It was my truth till I met you. Then you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. And now your mercy has saved my soul, and now your freedom is all that I know. We obey you, Jesus, when I met you. Oh, then you call my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You call my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. I needed rescue, my sin is heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing, now your love is the air that I breathe in. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, shout it, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Sing it to him. You call my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Yes, you call my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day, out of the darkness into your glorious day.
Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you for life, life eternal, life evermore.
The sun cannot compare to the glory of your love. There is no shadow in your presence. No mortal man would dare to stand before your throne. before the Holy One of heaven. It's only by your blood, and it's only through your mercy, Lord, I come. I bring an offering of worship to my King. No one on earth deserves the praises that I sing. Jesus, may you receive the honor that's your due. Oh Lord, I bring an offering to you. The sun cannot compare to the glory of your love. There is no shadow in your presence. No mortal man would dare to stand before your throne, before the Holy One of heaven. It's only by your blood, and it's only through your mercy, Lord, I come. I bring an offering of worship to my King. No one on earth deserves the praises that I sing. Jesus, may you receive the honor that's your due. Oh Lord, I bring an offering to you. It's only by your blood, and it's only through your mercy, Lord, I come. I bring an offering of worship to my King. No one on earth deserves the praises that I sing. Jesus, may you receive the honor that's your due. Oh Lord, I bring an offering to you. I bring an offering of worship to my King. No one on earth deserves the praises that I sing. Jesus, may you receive the honor that's your due. Oh Lord, I bring an offering to you.
Amen. All right, Brother Russ is going to come and share a beautiful song with us this time.
I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me, and all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, well, I will sing of the goodness of God. For all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest nights. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. When my life's laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Man, that's one of my favorite songs. How about you? Seriously. David said he would have fainted unless he had failed to see the goodness of God in the land of the living. Sometimes you need to see the goodness of God in your life because sometimes you don't see good around you, and it's really important. Children may be dismissed to children's church. Count with me. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Have you figured out that you're counting down to a lot of things in life? I remember when I was 14, I could not wait and I'd count it down the days until I got my learner's permit. You remember that? Some of you are counting down the days to college, right? The first days of class, and that brings apprehension. And Some of us here are older. Some of you are thinking about the first days of retirement, and some of you are saying, I just quit that countdown a long time ago, you know. We count down to a lot of things. I think about young ladies who prepare for their weddings in their mind. You know, all these shows on TV that, you know, and I had this conversation this morning with Emily. I said, you have all these years to plan your wedding pageant, and that's why, which I don't like. Christian worship I like in weddings as a wedding. I think it's wonderful, but you know, you think about it, and we count down. You are doing a lot of things in the countdown, aren't you? A lot of things you're counting down. And it may be little things, increments. You think about now, school's beginning to start. Some of you are already counting down to Christmas. Matter of fact, our marketers will have us counting down, right? You know, you barely can get through Halloween now till you're in Christmas. You know that. We're counting down. It's kind of like the way of life, and you just count down from one day to the next, and one thing to the next, and count down to vacation, and then you count down to when school starts, and you count down when you graduate, you count down to when you drive, you count down when you finish your class, you count down the day of a class, you count down. Think about it. How many times have you sat in your workplace at times, and maybe in the times past, and you count down watching the clock, waiting for time to leave? You ever done that? Somebody talk to me. See, I'm down here now. I can see you. Yeah, you got me? Y'all got this? So, you know, we end up counting down a lot of things, and I'm like, what are we counting to? You know? We count down. You know, some of you may be counting down to when this thing ends here today. Yeah. You're like, okay, you know, make it good, Greg. Make it a snappy one. I seldom do that. But we live in a countdown. We live in a countdown. Psalm chapter 90, verse 12, says this. It says, to teach us to number our days. Why is it that we count down? You ever thought of it? Why is it that we count down? It says, teach us to number our days and apply our hearts to wisdom. That psalm reminds us, and we're all reminded of it all the time, of the brevity of life. That life at its best is brief. James calls it a vapor. That it's brief. And with the brevity and with the idea of the brevity of life, we are challenged to make every minute matter. We know the importance of it. We know the importance of it. Life's brevity points the heart to find meaning and prompts us to live wisely, making the most of it. That's why. Think about it. If you didn't have to worry about time, it wouldn't be a thought. Wouldn't be a thought for you. The psalmist says to teach us to number our days and apply our hearts to wisdom. To say it in words that you and I understand, you better live wisely because life is short. You live wisely because life is short. We're going to look in the Proverbs, and in the next few weeks, I don't think I've ever, in 40 years of preaching, I don't think I've ever preached a series through Proverbs, and I think, well, it's probably time. And when we look at the Proverbs, you're basically looking at sentences and a lot of times parallelisms, if you're looking at it as a piece of literature. We're going to look at some of them. We're going to look at this. You know, I believe that we're living in probably one of the most exciting times to be alive. Do you think so? Do you really? Do you? Yeah, some of you are like, yeah. It's difficult. It can be difficult, but it's exciting. Think about it. We have information. We have information at our fingertips. Have you noticed that? You go to the doctor. Doctor gives you this diagnosis that you have. You immediately go home and you do what? Somebody say it real loud. You Google it. And then you find out some things you really wish you didn't know. Right? That's usually what happens. You find out some things. We live in a time where, it used to be that time was a commodity. Information is a commodity now. And marketers have figured it out because they target us based on our demographics, our age, our gender, all kinds of our interest. They know you well. And they market now, strategic marketing toward you because of information. It's the age of connectedness and technology. It's a paradox in many ways, the time that we live. We live with all of these different ways to be connected to one another, and yet the feelings of isolation are pervasive. Why is that? Why is that? Well, I think Eliza maybe hit part of it in her appeal for ladies to be connected. And that is that really at the end of the day, what we all desire is to know and to be known. And to know that we matter. And to know that life matters. And what I'm going through matters. So life gives us a brevity, and we deal with it. So knowledge is massive, though. Think about when the information age kind of started. Everything was in what they called bytes, B-Y-T-E-S. It went from bytes, then it went from kilobytes, which was 1,000 bytes, and then it went on from there to megabytes, 1,000,000 bytes, and now a gigabyte is 1 billion, and we're past that, by the way. We're in terabytes now, 1 trillion bits of information, and now we're even past that. Petabytes, 1 quadrillion. In other words, the age that you're living in that we're in is an age of massive information. Massive information being at our fingertips. And this, you think about how it has grown exponentially. In 1900, they looked at this, researchers have looked at it, and they thought that knowledge doubled every 100 years. By 1945, they said that knowledge was doubling every 25 years. You think with technology and all the things that of the industrial age. And they say then by our current age is that, and it was that knowledge was doubling here just a few years ago, every 12 months. And now they're saying that knowledge, or the availability of knowledge, is increasing at such an extent that it is doubling every 12 hours. And you say, well, that's a great thing. Well, it's a good thing if you have the character to know what to do with it. It is good and it is great if you have the moral fabric and a moral framework to know what to do with knowledge. But as you know, knowledge can be good and knowledge can be dangerous. It is the time of knowledge that we're in. Will you say, does the Bible have anything to say about it? Surely the Bible is not relevant to our time and day, is it? Well, yeah, it is. Matter of fact, in the book of Daniel, he says at the time of the end, there will be massive amounts of knowledge. Knowledge will increase. One of the things of living wisely in the day and time that we're in is that we really need to know our Bibles. You really need it. With all the information around you, people are not sure what information to believe or not. What is information? Is it generated from artificial intelligence, or is it generated in some other fashion? So we begin to think about the the importance of knowing the Bible. And the Bible does say this. Daniel says this. He says, shut up the book. He says, know that the time of the end, these things will be opened unto you. And know that in that day there will be an increase of knowledge, maybe prophetic knowledge, but also it could be knowledge that we're dealing with today. And people will travel to and from without a thought. Be wise to our times. So what should it do for us? Well, it should prompt us as believers to say, I want to live my life wisely before the Lord, and I want to look for Him, because the Bible says, or the whole narrative of the Scripture, better said, is pointing to the revelation and the consummation of all of time in Christ. And for those who look for Him, will fashion their lives in such a way that their lives are given to wisdom, and they want to live in purity before Him. It is this idea of a pure heart that has been completely surrendered and living purely before the Lord. Why? Because He's coming again. Now that's the narrative of the Bible. That the world or the culture or anything is not descending into chaos, and it may seem that way, but it's actually coming to consummation in the revelation of God's Son. What are you saying, Greg? I'm saying nobody knows the day or the hour, but Jesus could come any moment, couldn't He? Do you believe that? I believe it now more than ever. Now more than ever. Proverbs chapter 1 talks about how to live wisely. How do we live wisely in this age? You see, I want you to look at this, and we're going to look at the idea of knowledge. And I'm going to read from the New King James, and then we're going to look at the New Living Translation, because you'll understand after you read it. Here, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, the king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction and the wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity. I love how the New Living Translation, which I use a lot, these are the Proverbs of Solomon, David's son. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom. He just lays it out clearly. And discipline. To help them understand the insights of the wisdom. Their purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives. There's not one parent that doesn't want this for your kid. Right? And to help them do what is right, just, and fair. Those are character issues. So we begin to see that Solomon is looking at three different aspects of our lives that relate to wisdom. And the first one is wisdom itself. This is the ability, wisdom itself is the ability not only to understand abstract things. Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Wisdom in the Bible was this idea of not only the ability to understand maybe things that are abstract, but the ability also to live prudently in your life. So it involved an element of decision making and behavior that would bring what you know into reality. We would call it, in some respects, common sense. But it's the ability to make the connection between principles of life and living and integrating those into our lives. That's why just hearing sermons, really, it may increase your knowledge, some. but it may not make you wise. You see, I've known people that have known the Bible, but were not wise. It's possible to know the Bible and not be wise. Now, but to be wise, you must know the what? The Bible. So wisdom deals with application. Wisdom deals with discipline. Wisdom deals with how you integrate this into your lives. How this works when it's fleshed out. What it looks like. And then he talks about understanding. So we have these three realms that are all, and they're all nuanced, and they're all kind of interconnected. So one of the things that you want in life is you want to know that you want the know-how, a person to have a skill, and to have knowledge that is backed up with it, that is known knowledge, and to have understanding, and that would be the insight into things. You see, it's one thing to have wisdom and knowledge, and it's another thing to have understanding, because understanding connects you to meaning. And that's what we're all looking for in life. That's kind of encoded in us, that we search for and we want meaning in life. We all do it, don't we? Don't you? Yeah. You have a traumatic event in your life. You know what you're going to do? You're going to say, well, I'm trying to figure out the meaning for this for me. I'm trying to figure out how to process this. It's all in us. It's all within us, and it's how God created us, that we live life. And in that search is a search to know that our life does matter, and there's significance in it, and there is meaning to it. That's why, again, when there's a loss in your life, or when those things, it's the internal thing of the compass of the soul that searches for that. It just does. And it's nothing new. It's how God has wired us. It's how God has created us. So, wisdom is good. Yes, and you need it. You need knowledge. Knowledge is obviously facts, but obviously knowledge is more than just facts. It deals also with this realm of experience of knowing God. So it's personal. God is relational. God is personal. And then understanding is insight in it. And man, I tell you, I think if there's ever a time that we need a good dose of understanding, it is the day and time that we're living in. How about you? You think that? You need insight into life. You need the insight into what you're hearing is true, or is it nuanced by somebody's worldview that may be different than your own. You need wisdom to know direction in your life, what to do next. Don't you? Man, I do. Sometimes you need wisdom to know when to speak. Sometimes you need have wisdom to know when to keep your mouth shut. Right? Sometimes you need wisdom in how you operate in relationships. How many times have you said, and I've said it a few times, boy, I wished I hadn't said that. You know? Sometimes my wisdom, as vast as it is not appreciated. How about yours? Well, sometimes, see, if I'd have had insight and understanding, I would say, no, it's just not the right time. It's different, isn't it? So one thing is one thing to have application. It's another thing to have insight to know timing. Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Now, here's the neat thing. Solomon gives us all of these proverbs, and here's what you find out as you look at these, and this is why you need wisdom. Here's what Charles Spurgeon said. I love this. He says, wisdom is the right use of knowledge. To know is not to be wise. Many men know a great deal, I love this, and are all the greater fools for it. Yeah. There is no fool so great as a knowing fool. But know how to use knowledge is to have wisdom. True. Solomon was one of the wisest men of his day. He was one of the wisest men of his day. Let's go on and read the rest of these verses. Because here goes the purpose. He says, these proverbs will give insight to the simple, knowledge and discernment to the young. And let the wise listen to these proverbs and become even wiser. Let those with understanding receive guidance by exploring the meaning in these proverbs and the parables and the words of the wise and all of these riddles. And then he goes to verse 7, and this is the linchpin verse. Fear of the Lord is the foundation or the beginning of wisdom or true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Now, this is from observations that he has given us. I want you to think of Solomon. We have a lot about him. Actually, he was David's son. He had written over, I believe it was 3,000 proverbs. 3,000. Oh, here it is. 3,000 proverbs, and wrote over 105,000 top 40 songs. He'd have been on Casey Kasem, right? Y'all don't remember that. That's for those of us older. Okay. He wrote a lot of songs. 1 Kings chapter. I had to chuckle when I was reading through 1 Kings, because 1 Kings talks about his wisdom. And people would come to Solomon to gain wisdom, and they would come to him because he had studied and he had collected during his reign. He had collected a massive amount of information. I mean, it was a lot, and he had the wisest people that he knew. He had them to collect all of the data on animals, the animal kingdom, zoology, and the plant world. He knew all the plants that were growing in the garden, in his lavish gardens. He was a botanist of sorts, and I had to look this one up. He even was an expert in fish, an ichthyologist. I think that's right. Somebody correct me if it's not. But he was very wise. Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 4 verse 30, he says Solomon's wisdom excelled so much the wisdom of all men east of Egypt and the wisdom of Egypt. And he said he was wiser. Now I love this. He was wiser than all men, than Ethan. Ethan the Ezrahite. Oh, he was way wiser. He was pretty popular on his YouTube channel. Was pretty popular, but man, Solomon just blew it out of the water. You get it? He was way wiser than him. And listen, do you know the sons of Mahol? All the Mahol, Heman and Calmel and Darda. All of his sons, he was way smarter than them. He had it going. And so much so that people would come to hear him talk. That's pretty impressive. He was a wise man. All the nations from all the kings of the earth who heard the wisdom came to hear from Solomon. But why? Because Solomon was wise. And what he does is, have you ever wished that you could know? They say that Hindsight is what? 20/20 vision. You know that as a proverb. And what we have here, I want you to think of this. What we have here is the wisdom of people who observed life. They observed life and they said, here's what is the conclusion of things. In other words, if you summarize it, you get the Proverbs. So in chapters 1 through 9, you get, in the Proverbs, you get Solomon. You get Solomon who is giving instruction, 10 different instructions to his son. And he warns, he gives warnings, strict warnings to his son. You know, watch out for the ways of the prostitute, stuff like that. Then he gets in chapter 10, and it's the Solomon, these little tidbits of truth that he's explored. And it's everything from how do you bank to how do you know, your own identity, your own sexual health. I mean, it's very, very practical ways. Alcohol. You know, that's a big issue for a lot of people, and that'll be a big temptation for Christian kids on college campuses, let's just face it. And it is. The Proverbs gives wisdom into that issue. Issues of integrity. Issues of how you are to live in a very practical way in life. The importance of developing good habits and disciplines. Why? Because you know that flows from the depth of your character, and that determines the direction of your life. That determines eventually your destiny. All of these things are in the Proverbs. They're there. The last two chapters, chapters 30 and 31, he talks about King Agur and King Lemuel, and we hear King Lemuel's the qualities of a virtuous woman. Proverbs 31. But I want you to notice what he said now, because this is where I want to hang the hat. He says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." I want you to think about it. There was plenty of knowledge, and he had amassed a lot of it. He had been in school a lot. For Solomon, school was the classroom, and he was learning. And so he had gathered and developed this massive library of knowledge. He says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now, I want us to look at that. There's been times in my life that I've struggled with this concept of fearing the Lord. How about you? Well, wait a minute. I'm to be afraid of God? No, that's not what it's saying. Let's look at this. What is this idea of fear? This idea of the fear of the Lord. Because for somehow it doesn't rest easy in our lives. I mean, there's something that is so nuanced to it that it kind of makes us a little uneasy. Well, I don't want to be afraid of God. And that's how we process it. I don't want to be afraid of God. This idea of fear is yeroth in the Hebrew, and it literally means to have awe-filled reverence. To have an awe-filled reverence. It is a holy trembling in love. It's a holy trembling in love and wonder. Now you got to get that. It is a holy trembling. The fear of God is an awe-filled reverence that is humble. It is submissive to God. And it is a holy trembling in the love of God. I'm thinking that it's probably very akin to what Isaiah experienced and encountered in the temple. God's glory and His presence and His awe filled the place, and he was awestruck at God, and he was acutely aware of his own need, his own sin. It was dread in a positive way. It was the recognition that God is all of that and more. And I am a creature, and a sinful one at that. All-field reverence. Now, David Jeremiah says, somebody says, ask him at times, he says, people ask him, he said all the time, he said, they say, well, what's wrong with America? And he said, if you want to count one thing that's wrong in America, here it is. We have lost, and this is primarily the church, we have lost our sense of awe or the fear of God. We've lost it. Culture that fears the Lord is not looking for ways to sin. A culture that is in fear of the Lord is not saying, I want to see how close to the line of sin that I can get so I can have a good time, or that I can maximize the pleasure in my life. It's not wise. No. The wisdom and the fear of the Lord says that I want to know Him, and because there is no encounter more satisfying than knowing Him. It's knowing Him. We were singing a song this morning. I was imagining Steve, this guy. Where's Steve at? Steve, are you here? Oh, there you are. I was imagining this guy getting out of that tomb, Lazarus. Man, I think if I got out of that tomb and I got those grave clothes off me, I would just keep on running. I could just imagine him running. I said, where are you running, Lazarus? Oh, I'm just running. You know? You got free. Yeah, I could just imagine him just running. You know, you get me unbound out of that thing and get me out of the grave, and I will run. And I bet you he ran everywhere he could telling folks. What do you think? That was just me. That didn't cost you anything extra. Fear. So how are you doing there? Let me give you a couple of thoughts as it relates to this, and I want you to look at these. How do you relate to this term fear? Is it an awful dread that prompts you to run from God in isolation, to live in anxious phobias and worry? Is it that? Or is it an all-field devotion that prompts to run to God in devotion, because in loving intimacy and wondering and wonder of Him and in Him? Now let me illustrate this. Adam and Eve in the garden had an all-field, AWE, field encounter with the living God daily. It was communion with Him. They walked with God in the beauty of the garden day in and day out. There was this harmony there, and they didn't know it as harmony. They just knew that that's the way it was. It was life. God had created the garden for them. They knew the garden. They loved the garden. They loved their God. And God said, you know, this idea of love, it does involve will and obedience. So one of the ways that you know that there's love is this idea of obedience. And He says, I don't want to make a Robotron of you. I want you to have a will. So I'm saying you can eat of any tree of the garden except one. Satan comes along, tempts them. Now what did he tempt them with? Think about it. You say, well, He tempted them to eat of the tree. No, he tempted them with knowledge. Do you know that the day that you eat of this tree, Satan told Eve and Adam, or Eve particularly, that this will be the day that you will be like God. You see, God's kind of holding out on you in the relationship. What was Satan's fall? Was pride. He wanted to be like the Most High. So Satan is on the scene. They are deceived. They fall into sin. And guess what happens? They go to the furthest part of the garden. They run from God. And they run in isolation. Well, I'm happier alone. Well, no, they wasn't happy at all. They were miserable. They run from God, and they were living in isolation, and they lived with shame, guilt, and fear. Phobias. The result of the reality of phobias and fears was a result of the fall into sin. And so what does God do? God, being the gracious God and loving God that He is, He goes to the furthest part of the garden and He asks Adam and Eve a simple question. He says, "Where are you?" Good question. Where are you? Did God not know where they were? No, He knew. They now had a knowledge, quote, of good and evil because of disobedience and rebellion. And also what they knew was that there was once that was an all-field experience and encounter with God was now an all-full dread. Think of it. It was an all-full dread of God. I'm not surprised, honestly, frankly, I'm not surprised where some people say, you know what, I just don't want to do this God thing. I don't want to do the church thing. I don't want to be, and so what do? You just isolate yourself more in your own fears and anxieties and guilts. That's what you do. And that's a choice. And it's a product of the sin nature that indwells all of us. The natural proclivity is to say, hey, it's my life. I mean, we sing about it. I mean, we don't sing about it here, but it's on your top 40 radio. We sing about it. It's my life. Well, how are you doing with it? So how do you relate to this fear of God? God desires them in their shame, in their guilt, in all of their misery. He goes to where they are. And I want to suggest that God comes to right where we are. The things that you're ashamed about, the things that you're afraid of, He comes right into the depth of your weakness and your worry and your sins. He comes right to you. He's not afraid of you. He comes right there. And He reaches out in love and with love and forgiveness. And what does He do? He says, why are you got all these fig leaves on you? What are you hiding from? Adam? Here. Then they realized that the animals that they had named, God sacrificed one and clothed them. In other words, you don't wink at sin. It has real consequences in our lives that really hurt. Why? Because God created a moral world and a moral universe, and when the moral laws are violated, we suffer. He knows it. That's how He created it. Which ought to prompt us and can propel us to how then are we and can we live with wisdom. Let me give you 4 things. Okay? I'm going to give them to you quickly. Here's how it happens in your life, and here's how you do it. You first humble yourself under the authority of the good Creator and turn and repent from evil. That says that I love God more than I love my ideas and my thinking. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 8 say it this way: trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will do what? He will direct your paths. Do not be wise in your own eyes. That's the danger of knowledge. Don't be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and do what? Depart from evil. And it will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones. That's what he said. And so then this idea of fear here is this idea of humbly trusting him. That's how you integrate it. It's a heart issue. It's a heart issue. And so notice what he says. It's about relationship. It is trust. Trust is about relationship. Trust the Lord with how? With all of your heart. Recognize that your understanding is limited, but God's understanding is unlimited. So he says, humble yourself in relationship to God, your Creator. In other words, don't run from God, but rather run to God and embrace and be awe-filled with the depth of His grace and salvation. That's what you become awe-filled about. The wonder of salvation. You see, the angels desire and to look into that. They don't get this grace that you get. So you begin to reverence Him in your ways. You say, okay, God, how do you mean that? It means that, Lord, I'm giving my discipline, my study to you, and I want you to be honored and glorified in this hour of study as I'm going through this book. I want the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart. I want this to mold me somehow in what I'm doing. You say, well, I didn't know that the Christian life could be connected like that. That is normal Christianity. It's normal. In other words, you want God integrated and you want to walk reverently with Him in every single aspect of your life. You reverence Him. You turn from sin. And then you set a guard around your heart. Because out of your heart flow the issues of life. Number two, you guard, well, that's number two right here. You guard your heart from envy. That's envy. That's envy. That diminishes the fiery enthusiasm for the Lord. You want that fire, that enthusiasm of fire in the Lord. Do not let your heart envy sinners. Yeah, but man, they make it look so good. Yep, they do. Satan did the same thing with the tree in the garden. He made it look really good. He didn't come with pitchforks and said, you know what? You're getting ready to go through a hell in your life the moment you eat that. He didn't say that. He made it look great, man. It was appealing. It appealed, notice this, it appealed for the want of knowledge, and it appealed to the eyes. If I could just experience that would make me happy. Would it? Would it really? No, you may be playing a fool. So we'll look at it later. So don't let your heart envy sinners. You say, well, everybody's doing it. Yep. You're not everybody. No, you're somebody different. You're called to be separated unto God, unto Christ. And then you look at that idea then of zealous. You say, do you know how easy it is for your heart to grow cold on Jesus? It amazes me sometimes. Does it amaze you? Do you know what amazed George Washington, our founding father? Read his prayers sometimes. Read them. How easy it is for our heart to grow calloused. How easy it is for our heart to do what? To be cold. How easy it is. And he says, guard your heart then from envy. Why? Because, man, the world is bombarding you with images every minute. And you've got it on your body here in your phone. Day in, day out. The message is clear. The message is clear. Guard your heart. Guard your heart. And then you stoke up the fires by being involved in a small group, or by preparing your heart before worship, or by saying, or spending some time with God and His Word. From going through, matter of fact, I'm going to give you a challenge for this month here. Go through the Proverbs. Go through them from now to next month. Read one chapter a day, and you'll finish it in a month. You'll have the whole book of Proverbs finished. Read it. That's a challenge. Okay? I'm not going to make you make a commitment. I couldn't make you anyhow. Life, you say, well, I did, but life got busy. I know. It does for me too. Number 3. You ready? Life brevity that drives the search for meaning can also prompt a wholehearted pursuit of knowing God, the God of all of life. You say, okay, God, life is brief, life is short. Again, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Number 4. Here's number 4. The most satisfaction you will have in life, now and forever, is in the awe of the Lord. It's when you wonder in Him. It's when your wondering is not, it's when your mind is not wandering in worry, but when your mind is in wonder of God. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 26. I love this proverb. In the fear of the Lord there is strong confidence. That's what it produces. The reverence of God produces a more confident you. Why? Because of Him. And His children will have a place of safety. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life. It's the source of what you're looking for. To turn away from the snares of death. Run out of that grave. Run out of it. The fear of the Lord, Proverbs chapter 19, verse 20, the fear of the Lord leads to life, and he who has it will abide in satisfaction. He will not be visited with evil. Did you see that? Seriously? Yeah. So, what is he saying? He's saying the greatest probability for you to find meaning and satisfaction in life is when God is in a place where He's reverenced. You see it? Now that's Solomon's wisdom. That's Solomon's wisdom. It sounds a lot like Jesus. Jesus says the wise man will do what? Build his house upon the rock. He said there's going to be adversities that come in life, and it's going to blow, and it's going to feel like that it's going to blow the thing off of its very foundation. He said the foolish man builds his house on the sand, the rain comes down, he washes the foundation out from under it, and it's washed away. He said the same as the person who hears my words, Jesus said. The wisest person who ever lived was Jesus. It was Jesus. It was all in Him. He is the wisdom of God. And it begins with knowing Him. It begins with a heart that is rightly related to Him. In knowing Him, it's when we come to the realization that what we're running from is the Creator who created us to know Him and to know life. It's what He created us for. And we go off and search into everything from, anything today because something just looks good. Don't play the fool. Don't play the fool. Have you ever read through Ecclesiastes? And I'm closing with this. I have. Preached through it a few times. I always encourage people, if you're ever depressed, don't read through Ecclesiastes. Why? It takes 11 chapters to talk about how meaningless life is. 11. He says, well, I tried work. I worked myself to the bone. He said, I tried that. He said, I went down the route of pleasure. He said, man, every day was a party and a wine fest. He said, I lived it up. I lived for pleasure. And you know, the words of the King James are beautiful. He says, all of it is vanity and vexation of spirit. Doesn't sound good, does it? He said, it's all meaningless. He said, after all of this, he said, he tried wisdom. He said, I looked and searched for knowledge and everything, and to find an end to it all. He said, I tried that. I got degree after degree after degree, and there was still a hole in my heart. He said, I tried relationships, and boy did he. He said, the conclusion of it all is, what do? After 11 chapters of saying that it's not there, it's not there, it's not there, and it's not there, he says, here it is. Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13. Fear God and keep His commandments. Solomon is an interesting character in the Bible. And I'm thinking, how could one of the wisest men who ever lived, how in the world, and why did he have so many wives? Had probably upwards to 1,000. And what's sad is that all of these things that Solomon has given us is through a lens and a picture of a man who married several different women from all kinds of foreign nations. He would actually make temples for their gods as well and worship with them at time. I mean, it wasn't good. You get the picture? He made political alliances. Wasn't too wise. And that ought to really be an eye-opener for all of us. To think, yeah, where is it at then? It's not in how many degrees you get. Trust me. It's in knowing God. And having your heart rightly related to Him. And asking God for wisdom for the daily stuff of life. Why? Because you're going to be presented with a lot of things that you won't have answers for. And your heart is going to be drawn away. That's why. That's why. Here's the ancient wisdom. Why don't we give God our hearts? We're going to have, Russ, come on. We're going to sing, he's going to sing a song for us. Comes the table. I got communion up here, by the way. And, man, think about how I said that. We have communion here. Our communion with God. Our communion with God. Maybe there's an area in your life you say, man, Greg, I really need to have wisdom in this. Well, then ask. Ask God. Ask Him for it. God was pleased with Solomon in his asking for wisdom. I'm going away. I'm scared. I'm a little timid. Then ask God to strengthen you. Ask God to be that source for you. Ask God. I'm dealing with an ethical dilemma. Ask God. I'm dealing with this longing in my heart that's not right. Give it to God. Don't run from Him. I'm dealing with a temptation. Run from that. Run to God. I'm dealing with, I want to live to please my friends. I want to be accepted. How about God's acceptance? What does that look like? Can you lean into that? All of these, I'm telling you, all of these are the practical issues of life. I want us to pray together. And I want to invite you. We've got an altar now. And a place to pray. Man, if you want to give your heart to Jesus, do it. Do it today. Don't run from Him. Run to Him. Run to Him. Maybe you just want to ask Him for wisdom in your life. Or maybe you just want to come and say, Lord, I'm reaffirming today, and my heart is yours. We'll celebrate communion together. Okay? Father, I ask that you do with this what pleases you the most. Give us ears to hear, hearts to listen, and a desire for you more than anything. I pray that you'd bless the cup and bless the bread that we will share together as a body. We ask this in your name. Amen. Let's stand together. Russ is going to sing. He's going to sing. You're welcome to come. You're welcome to come pray. You're welcome to come get your communion.
Hear the voice of love that's calling. There's a chair that waits for you, and a friend who understands everything you're going through. Standing at a distance in the shadow of your shame, but there's a light of hope that's shining. Won't you come and take your place? Bring it all to the table. It's nothing he ain't seen before. For all your sin, all your sorrow, and your sadness, there's a Savior and he calls. Bring it all to the table. Can see the weight you carry, the fears that hold your heart. But through the cross you've been forgiven. You're accepted as you are. So bring it all to the table. It's nothing he ain't seen before. For all your trials, all your worries, and your burdens, there's a Savior and he calls. Bring it all to the table. Bring it all. Come on in, take your place. There's no one who's turned away. All you sinners and all you saints, come on in and find your grace. Come on in, take your place. There's no one who's turned away. All you sinners and all you saints, come on in and find your grace. And bring it all to the table. It's nothing he ain't seen before. For all your trials, all your worries, and your burdens, there's a Savior and he calls. Bring it all to the table.
And Jesus, we thank you that you're never surprised. You're the God of full grace. And you provided through Christ the means for our communion with you. And I pray that as we partake of the bread together, that your blessing would be upon it, upon the recipient as well. Let us eat in remembrance of the Lord's broken body. And now, Lord, we're reminded that it was through the shedding of your blood that the sinner is made clean. We are thankful that communion reminds us of the depth and the power of your grace, the wonder of your salvation. I pray that you'd bless the cup and the recipient as they take and partake in remembrance of the shed blood of Christ. In His name we pray. Amen. You may drink. Now, you'll know if this message took this week, and here's how. That you leave this place with saying, Lord, I want you reverenced in every area of my life, in my thoughts, my emotions, my will. And I pray that this week, my heart and my life would be enraptured with the wonder of Christ, with the wonder of Him who saved us through His blood. Go in peace.